Oh, nice.
Okay, this is a planting stick. You use it for planting cauliflowers.
Oh.
One year, I think my grandpa thought that we should have cauliflower growing in our yard. My dad had some spare land, and he put in 400 plants, which sounds pretty good, except cauliflower had to be tied, the leaves had to be tied up. Otherwise, the cauliflower goes yellow when the sun gets at it. So that was my job. And I don't know, we only did it once. I think Grandpa maybe learned better. This is a sugar beet hoe. The little blade at the end is replaceable so it could last forever. And this is our wonderful high-tech scraper.
Oh.
And the beauty of it is that you could hoe your sugar beets and hold the scraper without having any pockets. And we never had pockets in the field. And another thing I brought to show is a rake. And this sort of shows the ingenuity of my dad. You get an old pipe, you get a broken rake, you weld them, and you've got something that lasts forever. So I snagged that when we got off the farm, and it works beautifully well because I've broken other rakes. He also did the same thing with a pitchfork, a garden fork, and another fork. He was able to do those things, and that helped a lot on the farm. And that's the end of my thing. Thank you for listening.
Good. How about questions?
Oh, any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know now why some of the Overwater girls in particular were some of the best runners. And the generation before, some of the best cyclists. There was a bike race, I think, where the Overwater girls would ride all the way up to one of the beaches and leave all the guys in the dust. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, yeah, my aunts and my dad did bike race. I have a couple of pictures on the board over there.
Okay.
I think Dad raced to Kenora one year. I don't know if he won or came second on that.
Ooh.
And he raced to Winnipeg Beach, came second in that. Yeah, they did. They biked a lot. They biked a lot. And my sisters and I were, you work on the farm. You learn to be reliant. You learn to be strong because Albert was 6 years younger than me. We had to work. We had to throw bales. We had to help Dad with the heavy lifting until he got big enough. And like Len said, you get to be physically strong. I think one of my sisters and I favorite activities or favorite sports at school was discus and shot put.
Yeah. I think little Charleswood Collegiate won the provincials a couple years in a row against all the big schools.
Those
and that was
were
with Overwaters and Van Roon.
The Van Roon girls and my sister Elaine were pretty darn good runners.
Yeah.
They were pretty fast friends for a long time. Any other questions? Yeah.
Jack mentioned moving from around Loudon down to by the river, and because farms need water. And I know in some of the pictures you guys had more water than you needed. But what did they do for irrigation back then? I mean, they didn't have the irrigation systems they've got now.
Prayed for rain.
The luck of the draw.
Yeah.
No, I don't ever recall them irrigating. As a matter of fact, if my dad ever planted plants, he would give them a shot of water when he planted them and maybe once more. And after that, they were on their own. They seemed to do okay without irrigation. And it's kind of interesting. Jack was talking, or somebody was talking about the Hofstedes who lived on Wilkes, and they were really good friends of my grandparents. And I don't think they irrigated either.
Well, that's one reason we moved, of course, down to the Karen properties and out to, anyway, we had miles and miles of irrigation.
You probably, I think the Kuipers were always beef farmers.
Well, I don't know about that, but I just remember Dad going down to Sanderson's and buying 3 pair of rubber boots, all the same size. Because when they're in the garage, of course it didn't matter. He didn't want us to have all the same size and just you could grab whatever went. And we had to slug those pipes through that mud.
Oh.
Moving that. And of course, I never wore any socks because they were always in the end of the rubber boots. Never wore any socks out. It was just a blast.
Well, we never irrigated on Hearthstone anyway. It was never even thought of. As I said, you would pray for rain. You would hope for rain, but the soil there was not the best. The soil that was on the Wilkes farm was quite nice. On Hearthstone, well, there was a lot of low spots, and you saw the water pictures where the water would settle. So, it never was really an issue. Like sometimes the crops weren't as good, but Dad diversified, and I think grain is maybe more tolerant to not being irrigated in this area. Anybody else?
What enticed me to come to the meeting is I live on Overwater Cove.
Oh,
Right.
isn't that
Is
interesting?
that an honorary naming, or do you have some association with the property there?
I probably believe the Van Roons had something to do with it, but yes, it was because we were a historic family in Charleswood. Yes,
Did your dad ever use fertilizer on any of his crops, like the potato?
absolutely.
Oh.
And he sprayed bugs too and weeds. We were not organic.
Fertilizer that we used one year, I remember the Harris boys, Jim Harris had a big farm just out in Headington there by the bridge, and that was one big cattle farm. And so we hauled, I don't know how many semi-loads of manure back, and then had a big spreader. So we did all the acreage. We had 150 acres. We did all with manure. And was that fun the next year? Well, we used a lot of fertilizers, pesticides, and everything else.
Well, you almost had to. Like, you just think, one of the last years my dad grew any amount of cabbage or Brussels sprouts or that. Canola was in the area, and you get those flea beetles from canola.
Yeah.
And he would go out every day and spray, and there were little drifts of those little black bugs dead. It was just disgusting, and then we just stopped growing it. But, what can you do about it? You can't, you can't wish them away. You've got to poison them. Any other? Yes.
Yeah, my dad, my late father was a farm replacement parts buyer from Cloud Stedman in Milford Valley Hardware. And I remember him telling me when we first moved out of Charleston in the 1960s that a lot of the land on the, on the other side of Wilkes, the south side of Wilkes, although a lot of the farms have been bought up during the Great Depression, basically by grain buyers and the grain exchange. So a lot of the farmland was rented. I went to high school with a fellow whose dad, I think, had 2 sections of land over where the Sioux Lagoon is. It was all rented land, and I'm just wondering, when you mentioned the original farm was on McCreary Road, I was just wondering whether you had anything in the family when all of that land was bought up.
Well,
it basically became rented land.
Yeah, the farm on McCreary Road, what they bought, and that wasn't enough to, like, by that time, I had 2 uncles with families living on the property, and that wouldn't have been enough acreage to sustain farming. So they did buy some other land, but I know they rented quite a bit, and I know Dad, when he was doing like the 100 acres of sugar beets, he rented quite a bit of the land wherever he could find it.
One thing that strikes me, you go down Wilkes, and virtually no houses, farmhouses on any of the acres is farmed there. I mean, it's all grain fields, but it's just something that popped in my head that at one time I'm sure these were 160 to 320 acre farms. And yet now they're just, I don't know who owns them now, but they're just CPP grain operations.
Yeah, I think a lot is owned by speculators.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I can imagine now a lot of it's just.
But I think the way the farms worked, and I was thinking about trying to research it, and I thought, well, forget it, you're not going to do that. But anyway, the farms along the river all went back 2 or 4 miles, I think. They were a quarter of a mile across. And I think my dad's farm was the remnant of the Hearthstone farm.
Yes.
But no, there's never been very many houses there. There's a few people, but you know, it's not nice in the winter. The roads weren't good. You had no services.
I'm not quite sure why I remember that because, you know, you're telling me that, but it's just, you know, you think you're not listening to your parents when you're young.
Yeah, I wish I'd listened a lot harder too. I would have known a few more things today.
It struck me that, you know, you already don't see any housing out there. Now there are suburban houses on some of the roads, like Prairie and Modern and that, but you don't see farmhouses like you do when you go to rural Manitoba, you know, on some of the back roads.
Well, it's just that you need a big farm. You need a lot of acres to make it work because the machinery is so very expensive. So you can't have these small farms. Any other question? Yes.
Just before you finished, you sounded like you were going to see if any of your family members had any stories.
I didn't see any volunteers, but I wish. Yeah. You know, they all have their stories, but it's life. That's what you do. You work, you have fun, and you forget it. Okay, that's it.
Fantastic.
Thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. Please stay for refreshments and check out the display, the Overwater display there. Ken Morissette is selling Grey Cup tickets at the back. And our next 4th Heritage Lecture Series is November the 10th at the Charleswood Library, the new one, at 6:30. Len Van Roon Sr. is presenting Memories of Children During the Second World War, A Different Perspective. Thank you.
Well done. Fantastic. That was great, thank you. It's fabulous. So I'm just going to get a little shot of this here. Do you want to tell me about any of these pictures while I just film it?
Very nice.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
This is the family. This is hi, Julia. What do you think?
Okay, hold on just one second, guys, while we just go through a few pictures, and then you can go through. Watch out for the tripod. Good.
This is the article as best as I could do it.
Okay, move over just a bit.
This is grain from the farm. I was using it for a craft project about 15 or 20 years ago, and I've just kept it.
Oh, isn't that
sentimental?
Nice. Not barley.
Nope, not barley. Barley's itchy.
What's the fire?
The fire, the cleanup on the farm. When we moved off the farm in 2007, all the junk got, my brother Albert with his big machine dug a big hole, and we threw anything burnable and not burnable in it and burned the hell out of it.
And you got potatoes?
These are potatoes. This is, yep.
Oh, I didn't see that.
This is my potato, or my bag needle.
Oh, okay.
You would take your thing, just spin it around back and forth, and then make the ears on the potato bags.
Okay, neat.
Yeah, it's my kids call it the vampire steak, but this is the digging stick.
Oh yes, okay. And that's what's the scale for? That's for weighing potatoes, or?
Scale, yeah, we used it for everything. As it says, it would do from a few ounces up to about 260 pounds.
And who do we have looking at these things? Are these overwaters?
This is my granddaughter Julia.
Okay.
Julia Anderson. And this is my grandson Levi Anderson.
Okay, very nice.
The far spot is a little bit of my mom's history.
Okay.
It maybe isn't that pertaining, but you can see the Hughes and Robertson first class meats and fish. My grandfather had, or my great grandfather had a butcher shop.
Oh, okay.
Family legend has it that My dad would deliver vegetables
Yes.
to the stores, and he might have met my mom there.
Oh.
Or he
And
might
there-
have met her at a barn dance.
And there's the huge truck. Is that hay?
That is
That
hay.
didn't come across in the picture.
That is hay, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
No, no.
It's a beautiful display.
Oh, thank you. And this is just something my dad had in his papers.
Guide to identifying
Sugar
weeds.
beet weeds.
Spray them, pull them, kill the insects.
Yep, anyway.
Fantastic.